now invite the distinguished representative of Angola to take the floor.
Mr. President, Excellencies, Angola aligns itself with the statements made by Tunisia on behalf of Africa Group, Uganda on behalf of Group of 77 plus China, and Azerbaijan on behalf of non-aligned movement. Mr. President, let me thank the UN Secretary General for his report and encourage his efforts to put an end to the economic, commercial, and financial embargo imposed by the United States of America against Cuba. Allow me also to recognize and welcome the Cuban delegation, led by His Excellency Bruno Rodriguez Parilla, Minister of External Relations of Cuba. Mr. President, the U.S. embargo on Cuba is one of the most burning diplomatic issues we face today because it has been a prevailing for decades, even though it is contrary to the principles and the purpose of the United Nations Charter and to the international human rights law. This is shown by the successive debates in various international fora, including the United Nations, where time and time again, member states have overwhelmingly voted for its immediate and unconditional end. For more than 60 years, Cuba has been suffering the effects and the consequence of this situation, which penalized the Cuban population by preventing the implementation of social and economic programs and the integration of the country in the international trading system. Cuba continues experiencing major economic and social challenges due to the impact restrictions, discriminatory conditions and barriers, and imposed measures not compatible with the multilateral trade system, as well as blockage to finance and its effect on extraterritorial application on third markets. Under these circumstances, the country has limited access to the acquisition of appropriate equipment, technology, and pharmaceutical products, having to resort to intermediaries and substitutes at exorbitant prices and inferior quality to respond to the population's needs. The aforementioned measures are preventing Cuba from achieving 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and risking the country to fall behind in our collective effort for the betterment of the humanity. Mr. President, the United Nations Secretary General report draws a clear conclusion that the continuation of the U.S. economic, financial, and commercial embargo against Cuba and the inclusion of this country in the list of state-sponsored terrorism are incompatible with the international system grounded in the rule of law. Moreover, it's a blatant manifestation of the exercise of political and economic unilateral power in clear violation of human rights, including the right to development. Angola calls, once again, for the end of U.S. economic, commercial, and financial embargo, as well as the unilateral and coercive measures imposed against Cuba because they are threaten and violate fundamental human rights, including the right to self-determination and adequate standard of living, especially in the light of the current global economic and food crisis that require a multilateral approach and international solidarity. We reaffirm our commitment to continue supporting all initiatives and relevant United Nations resolutions to end this embargo against Cuba, based on the respect of and in compliance with the purpose and principles enshrined in the United Nations Charter and the obligation of states and international law. Angola encouraged the United States of America and Cuba to redouble their diplomatic efforts by engaging in a constructive and transparent dialogue in order to reach a comprehensive and lasting political understanding to foster mutually beneficial bilateral cooperation. Finally, we urge all the delegations to strongly support the resolution submitted by the Cuban delegation on the agenda item 38 the necessity to end economic, commercial, and financial embargo against Cuba. Thank you.
I should like to thank the distinguished representative of Angola for his statement, and I now invite the distinguished representative of Malaysia to take the floor.
We were listening to the statements of the representative of Dominica, who detailed the negative effects of the U.S. blockade on Cuba's people and economy. Dominica rejected the implementation of these illegal coercive measures. The representative praised Cuba's solidarity with nations of the region and the world, especially in the field of health and agriculture. The official called for the lifting of the blockade and also for the removal of Cuba from the U.S. State's Department list of nations that sponsor terrorism. We later also listened to the representative of Angola, who joined the calls for the urgent lifting of the blockade and reaffirms their support for all initiatives to bring these coercive measures that violates international law to an end. We will have more updates in upcoming news briefs. Stay tuned with teleSUR.